Welcome to the 15th edition of Jaipur Literature Festival, protected by Detol Banega Swasth India at Han Michalski Foundation, Bethak. The festival brochure and flyer with details of the full program are available for purchase at the information desk. We are delighted to introduce our Fathers and Forefathers. This session is presented by ABP Live. An accomplished poet, writer, and translator, Kynpham Sing Nongkynrih presents his debut work of fiction, Funeral Nights. The epic novel, which runs to over 1,000 pages, has been described as the Moby Dick of Meghalaya. Drawing from myths, folklore, poetry, and prose, the narrative is an intended recollection of stories and childhood memories, slotting a window to the often inaccessible world of tribal culture. Author and medical doctor Hansda Sowvendra Shekhar's books invoke life and landscape of Jharkhand and Central India from his own Santhali perspective about the Adivasi communities. In an illuminating session of conversations and readings, the two writers speak with writer Sudeep Chakravarti about the inspirations and context of their work and of how and why they write and for whom. Can we have a round of applause for our panelists? Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Good afternoon. Lovely venue, by the way, right? All air-conditioned splendor and all of that. So it takes the heat of all of us, but I can assure you we need to be turning the heat on my brothers over here. Ask them all you will. Let them read to you, let them speak to you, let them speak their minds to you. I'm not here to really jabber on. I've done that yesterday and today. This is the time for my brothers. Let me get straight away into the session. And I have a bit of a beef with JLF about the session. You know, I hope you gentlemen will take up on that a little bit and talk about it as we go on this afternoon. I see it's called Fathers and Forefathers. I don't see a mention of mothers and foremothers, which I wish that there was some sort of inclusion to that, not just a doff, but as it's not, I want to set the record straight. Mothers, foremothers, fathers, forefathers, and my young friend Sowvendra is very, very sort of empathetic and emphatic about talking about mothers and women in his own books.
That's patriarchy after all.
I'm so sorry?
That's patriarchy after all.
That's patriarchy after all.
And we are being apologetic about it?
Not at all.
Okay.
I just said that to provoke you. Of course, we should be deeply apologetic about patriarchy. Now you're trying to get me into trouble. It's the other way around. Now, let me begin with the sort of the main event. Now, you've seen that book. Look at the size of that book. It's called Funeral Nights, and it's a remarkable book. And I was talking to Kynpham earlier before the session, and I was saying that it's a remarkable achievement just to write a book of that size. And we'll talk about what it contains. That's what the session is about. But I also was telling Kynpham that I hope that you're not defined by this book alone. And it's a fine addition to a growing body of work, which includes 2 fine books of poetry, which you might want to look at as well. And there are other works which Kynpham has embarked upon. But let's talk about Funeral Nights. Brother, did you even know that you would end the book? I mean, you knew you would begin, but with a Moby Dick of a book, and there's a typographic error in the thing which makes the D, which should be uppercase D or lowercase d, so you can laugh and titter and joke about it. I'm a journalist by training, so I did when I saw that. So uppercase D, Moby Dick. When you wrote this book, you knew you would begin, but share with all of us your thoughts when you were writing the book and what led you to write this epic. There is no other way to describe it, and share with us about your impulses to attempt a book of this magnitude, and also briefly about what it contains, and we'll come back to that a little later. Please listen to this. Okay.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Actually, Sudeep, this is nothing. Because, when I wrote for 1,600 pages. And then Kartika and I pared it down to 1,000 plus pages because she thought that it was too difficult for her, to sell if he had printed 1,600 pages. And actually, this book has a very interesting history, if I may. The seeds of this book was sown at a literary festival called Kovalam Literary Festival. That was in 2008. I was, by a quirk of fate, I found myself sharing the dais with celebrities like Satchidanandan and Chachi Tharoor, reading myself composed poems. After Tharoor had read Darwish's, the poems of Mahmud Darwish, and after reading my poems, I suddenly saw a lady, beaming and speaking excitedly and coming to me. She said, I must publish your poems. And it turned out to be Kartika, who was then the publisher of HarperCollins. And that was how, my book of poetry, The Yearning of Seeds, was published by her. And then she was impressed by a line in one of the poems where I said, "Those days in Chera." She was intrigued by this line, "Those days in Chera." Chera is Cherrapunji, my birthplace, Sora. And she said, "Kynpham, apart from the poetry, you must write a memoir. There is a story in this line, those days in Chera. Give me a memoir, write a book for me." So I told her, "Kartika, I will do something better than that. I will give you a book. I will not write a memoir, but I will give you a book that will challenge genres." And I think I have succeeded in doing that, because Jerry himself said, it is a novel of huge ambition and tremendous appetite.
So he says himself, huh?
Or is it a novel at all? So I've been able to challenge genres. So that was the, so I knew actually, when I wrote this, I knew that it was going to be a huge book because I wanted to talk about my people, my homeland, which is not at all known to many people in mainland India. For example, when I was in Delhi once, they asked me from where. They thought I was somebody from outside the country, and they were asking for my passport and all that. So when they said, from where I came, I said Shillong, and they said, "Oh, Ceylon, you are from Ceylon." And then I mentioned Meghalaya. They had not heard of Meghalaya. Finally, I mentioned Cherrapunji. I said, "Do you know Cherrapunji?" And he said, "Waha to jyada barish hai." So I was very happy. So I thought, okay, I need to do something about this ignorance. But it is not only the ignorance of people from mainland India. It is the ignorance of the people, of my own people about their own culture, about their own past, about the legacy of their forefathers and foremothers. That was what inspired me to write this book. And I had so many things to say. I had a vast amount of information. I knew that it was going to be big. But the problem was how to put this vast information across without making the book tedious. And that was how I drew inspiration from the narrative frames of Boccaccio's The Decameron, which is built on stories upon stories, and the Arabian Nights, and the Socratic dialogues. So every weighty issues, can be tackled through a very conversational and very engaging style. So that's it.
Well, thank you for that, and we'll come back to. Please applaud some more. Thank you. You're a lovely audience. Thank you for that. And I'm going to come back to you, Kynpham, to discuss funeral nights and other matters. But funeral nights for now, because it is an epic. As you don't need me to tell you, you can see it for yourself. Now, my young friend, Sowvendra. Now, I'll come to him as well. And he told me, Sudeep, I'm so jaded with all these questions that I'm asked about being an Adivasi and being a doctor and my politics and my whatever, my personal life, so on and so forth, and I'm just tired of it. And, I'm just going to just be provocative, and I might just take over your job as chair and just ask Kynpham something. I'll sing songs, I'll read some poetry. So I had to calm him down, and I'm saying I'm not going to sort of ask these questions of you, but I will come back. One thing I did take leave of is that he's written this lovely, lovely collection called The Adivasi Will Not Dance. Please note, it is not the Adivasi cannot dance. They dance beautifully, wonderfully, and with utter harmony and beauty. But this is a politics that of my young friend Sowvendra, which I will return to, whether you like it or not. Because this is a statement, just one thing you have to suffer. But I'm proud and delighted to introduce Sowvendra this afternoon to you, not as a writer of short fiction, but as a writer of fine narrative non-fiction. And, so he's written a piece which I asked him to share with us. And I'll let him introduce the piece because that is the true dignity accorded to a writer. I will not do so. And I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you think, like I did when I read it, that he should be doing a lot more of this writing as well. So,
thank you, Sudeep. Thank you, Kynpham, and thank you all of you for coming. So basically, when I started connecting my friends, who I asked, are you going to the JLF? They asked me, are you going to the JLF? And I was like, yeah. And then I told them, I'm going to the JLF to sleep. I will be attending only one session, that is mine. And if somebody is able to drag me out of the bed at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, then maybe I'll be able to attend a session. But no, I'll be sleeping till 11:40 in the morning. Then maybe I'll go somewhere, I'll go shopping, and maybe for some time I'll be there at Clark's for the JLF, and then I'll again run away. And that is because I really am tired. I'm a doctor, a medical doctor. I work with the government of Jharkhand. That is one reason why the Adivasi Will Not Dance is in news, because it was banned by the Jharkhand government in 2017. So in 2017 was still a happier year, or should I say a less sad year. But 2020 and 2021 have been terrible. And that is one reason why whenever I find some time for myself, I just sleep. I just sleep. I just try to disconnect myself from everything. I can't switch off my phone though, although there are several times when I have switched off my phone or put it on flight mode for like 2 or 3 hours, or I put my phone on mute, but I sleep. And because I have not much time for my writing, I'm not writing any longer pieces. Starting in 2020, I started doing shorter pieces just to stay in the practice of writing. Because if you don't write, you never know whether you'll be able to write again or not, or if you can imagine things or not, if you can make up words or not. So in the beginning of each year, I write these essays, which are like 2,000 words or 2,500 words long, and they get published. And those are basically starting from 2020. Those are my only, outputs. Although this year, on 1st January 2022, I was able to publish a short story, which came in Mint Lounge. But this story was able to happen because I was told, I was given this hint that you have to write about the pandemic. And I was like, how am I going to write a story about a pandemic? So it was a sad kind of a story. But the piece which I would you like me to read this, Sudeep?
Yeah, and on agreed lines, so that I can get to Kynpham and share more about funeral nights.
So maybe I'll read this later on. I'll just give a background.
Going with the flow. I've introduced you that bit. Please read it. Okay.
So this piece which I wrote, this is called The Autumn of '82. and this was published in The Hindu. And this piece was inspired by a book. It is not a book review. It was inspired by a book, the biography of the actor Parveen Bobby, written by Karishma Upadhyay. It was published by Hachette. And reading this book, actually, we all know Parveen Bobby as a very sensitive person and a very intelligent person. This book, it tells so many facets about her life, her relationship with her family, but it affected me because I too have a Parveen Bobby memory of me. When my mother was pregnant, she went to watch a film with my father. So basically, since I was there in my mother's womb, I am considering that I too saw that film. So here is how it goes.
And skip that Titanic bit.
Okay,
I will put out a
Titanic.
contract on
Okay.
you.
In this essay about Parveen Bobby, there is also something about Titanic and Raja Hindustani and Kaho Na Pyar Hai.
No, do not.
Okay, I'll skip those
hyperjump.
parts. Okay. So here I go. In the latter half of 1982, when my father was living in the copper factory township of Mobhandar, which is about 5 kilometers from Ghatshila in Jharkhand, and my mother was pregnant, my father took her and my pishi, that is my aunt, my father's younger sister, on his Lambretta scooter, which he, like many others, called Lambi, to watch a film. They went to a cinema hall in Mosaboni, where the copper company had its mines, and which was about 13 kilometers from Mobhandar. It was a different time, the 1980s. Even simple television sets were a luxury for many. Small, quaint industrial townships, tucked away in the hinterland, surrounded by hills and forests, with a river or two running through, had a charm of their own. The bustle and twinkling glamour of the small bazaars of Mobhandar and Mosaboni outshone the fact that the road between the two townships was totally dark and practically deserted after sundown. The four places my father frequented for his filmy fix were the Workers' Cinema Club in Mosaboni for the highbrow stuff, the cinema hall in Mosaboni and one on the outskirts of Mobhandar for regular Hindi and Bengali movies, and the open-air shows organized for workers in a community space in Mobhandar. There was one cinema hall in the Ghatshila area which, after staying closed for a long time, reopened in 1995 with shows of the Govinda Karishma starrer Coolie No. 1, but I don't remember my father ever going there to watch a film, although he was invited to the reopening. It was not unusual for my film buff father to travel 13 kilometers just to watch a film he really wanted to see. He would take either the company shuttle to the cinema club or ride his Lambi or Yazdi to the cinema halls. I'll now skip some parts. When I was, this is how I came to the Parveen Bobby part of my family. When I was almost in my teens, during one of our random conversations, my pishi told me, "Your father took your mother and me to watch a film in Mosaboni. Your mother was pregnant with you at that time." It was just a small anecdote and I could have easily forgotten it, but perhaps because it was also about me, I was in my mother's womb as she watched the film, and because I eventually came to love film so much, my instant reaction was curiosity. Which film was it? I wondered how my father had managed to carry himself, his pregnant wife, and a sister on a Lambi and ride 13 kilometers and back for a film. My family, however, had quite forgotten the movie in question. The only thing they remembered was that it had starred Amitabh Bachchan and Parveen Bobby. So after I grew up, I Googled Amitabh Bachchan Parveen Bobby film 1982. I was born in 1983. 3 results came up: Desh Premi, Namak Halal, and Khuddar. I used logic. In Desh Premi and Namak Halal, Bachchan was paired opposite Hema Malini, also Shamila Tagore, and Smita Patil. So they were out. In Desh Premi, since Babi only played Bachchan's daughter and sister, respectively, I decided my family would more likely have remembered Hema Malini, who played the heroine, than Babi. In Namak Halal, Smita Patil was paired opposite Shashi Kapoor. Smita Patil was Bachchan's heroine, while Babi was paired opposite Shashi Kapoor. So that was ruled out too. I concluded that it was most likely Khuddar that my family had watched with me, the silent fourth. Now to the more personal parts. Yeah. Okay, so here I will discuss this book.
The ending of this is really poignant. It just gripped me. So I would urge Sowvendra.
Somehow the name Parveen Bobby struck a chord with me right from my childhood. I was already a fan of her seductive Oho from the Jawani Janeman song in Namak Halal. Since I had first heard it on a T-series audio cassette, I did some research later on and found out that this album, Disco Nasha, which we had on T-series audio cassette, was actually a Polydor record. T-series audio cassette titled Disco Nasha when I was 5 or 6. And then when I discovered that it was a Parveen Babi film that my family and I indirectly had gone to watch, it added to the fascination the Oho had generated. There is one more reason, again from childhood. When I recently read Karishma Upadhyay's biography, Parveen Babi Alive, I learned that the actor had quit working in films by 1990-91. I must have been around 8 or 9 at the time. I had encountered a comic strip in one of the many Hindi humor magazines that used to be published in the 80s. It showed a reporter trying to interview Babi. Her caricature wore a long, white, full-sleeved dress, which seems to have become one of Babi's most recognizable outfits, with her hair loose, as in her films and popular memory. She was depicted angrily chasing the reporter away through a forest with a gun in her hands. A particular word was used to describe Babi. I'm not sure whether I encountered it in that particular magazine or somewhere else. The word was neem pagal, suggesting a crackpot, an eccentric. As I grew older and watched many of Babi's films, even Khuddar, I wondered what she had done to deserve the epitaph. For years, I was disturbed by that derisive word used to describe her. Then Upadhyay's book came along, and in it, the actor comes across as an intelligent and sensitive person. Upadhyay has put together the pieces of Babi's life from various reports, interviews, and a long piece that Babi wrote about herself. At one place, Upadhyay mentions Babi telling Stardust magazine, "Look, there's no shame in poverty. If I had been down and out, why would I deny it?"
May I come in here,
Yeah.
Sowvendra? Now, you've set it up nicely.
Yeah.
Now, put this phone down
Oh, God.
and tell me very quickly, because I want to get to Kynpham and discuss the contents of his book, that why did it move you so much, what you read about Parveen Babi, and why did it affect you so personally that you were driven to write this narrative piece?
Should I be honest?
Yeah.
Maybe because of my relationship with my parents.
Okay, and?
There are so many things which we do not tell our parents.
Right.
So many things which we miss after our parents are gone, or maybe one parent is gone. And that exactly is the part where, Parveen Babi's mother, for 3 long years, her father had already departed. For 3 long years, she believed that her daughter is no more. And then,
So you connected as partial orphans in this particular case?
maybe,
All right.
maybe. There's a feeling that, once there is a personal loss, you come closer to your family and then they accept you or something.
All right, now that is a superb jumping point for discussing funeral nights, which is about orphaning of an entire people's, or evidently so, because otherwise, at least from the conversation that I've had with you earlier and from my reading of the book itself, it is a multi-layered book, ladies and gentlemen, which I hope that you read if you haven't already, and I will let the author speak, but Funeral Nights is an intended doublet, triple, quadruple, quintuple entendre, which has multiple meanings and reasons, and I want you, Kynpham, to please share with all of us as to what was your core intent when you wrote Funeral Nights? As Sowvendra talked to us about his core feeling for an output that he's now, even now he's thinking and he's moved by about his experience. But what really got you going with this, and what is the message that you're trying to convey with this vast book of immense possibilities? Let me put it that way. Every page is a possibility in this book.
I think rather than me talking about it, the best thing is to read excerpts from the book. Lines spoken by the narrator of the book. He explains, the reasons why he wants to undertake this project. This is the narrator, Abjutang, speaking. He says, "I have always wanted to write about us, Khasis, as a people. Who are we? What are our roots, spiritual and sociological? What is our culture? What does it teach? What can it teach? Where are we going? Why do we seem to lose ourselves like bees without a queen? As you have seen, outsiders can misunderstand us as wild-looking demons, and the misinterpretation and calumny continue. You know, I'm referring to Lindsay, one of the British Raj officials, who described us Khasis, you know, as wild-looking demons because we had red mouth stained by betel nut chewing. So the calumny continue. Vivek Ghoshal wrote an article about us, which he called "Mom's the Word." Mom's the word, because you know we are a matrilineal society. So he thinks that mom is everything. Mom's the word, and he talks about you know Khasi men are good for nothing, while women earn for the family. Men just eat and drink. They are parasites. Am I a good for nothing then? A parasite? Are we all? And there is more. Thomas Ladd and Paul Andrews, writing in an Australian magazine, headlined their piece thus: "Where women rule and men are used as breeding bulls." They even quoted a youth who supposedly said, "If I marry, then I am under my wife's control. I am just a servant. Are Khasi men mere breeding bulls? Will I, Abjutang, respected writer, sorry about this self-aggrandizement, but it is true, I am quite well known among the Khasis, come under my wife's control and become a mere servant when I get married, if I ever do?" And what about the Welsh evangelist, William Jenkins? Jenkins took a photograph of a Khasi priest performing a ritual way back in 1897 and wrote this caption for it: "Heathen priest consulting the demons before breaking the egg." I cannot help laughing at the daftness of these assertions, but at the same time, I cannot help thinking what a disservice they have done us over the years. Sometimes too, I feel a sense of frustration, of helplessness and uselessness when strangers come here and say whatever they like about us and get away with it. Among us, we have a word, jemdao or jemrngil, which means a souring of one's luck, enfeeblement of one's essence, destruction of one's personality. That is how I sometimes feel when I come across such oppressive statements. I'm ending soon. But even more appalling is the ignorance of my own people. We may have a literacy rate of about 60%, and many of us may be highly educated, but we know hardly anything about ourselves. We seek illumination from around the world, but are blissfully unaware of our own histories. And when we do take an interest in our own culture, we generally speak out of turn, with no understanding, and with only a tiny bit of knowledge. Some of us even describe our traditional democratic system, for instance, as something that resembles the Taliban way of life. So you see, all these are reasons why I wanted to write this book. As I said, how to make, how to talk about one's people, one's homeland, one's culture, and make it engaging and interesting. And that was when, when I came to know about this strange 6-day funeral, even for us, very strange 6-day funeral ritual belonging to a Khasi sub-tribe. I decided to use it. This is strange because they would keep the body in a tree house for as long as 9 months or more than a year, and the ritual would involve, among other things, the sacrifice of as many as 50 or 60 bulls. But there are a group of friends traveling from Shillong to witness this festival. But they made a mistake about the date and they got stuck in the jungle for 11 days. So what were they to do? They sit around a hut that has been specially built for them, and they spend their nights around a fire, telling stories, debating issues, and that is why Funeral Nights has been described as a vast collection of stories, big and small, about not so much about death, but about life, present, past, high and low, urban and rural, and all that, and all sorts of people. So, although it is a big book, I want you to know that, I want to say, that please don't be intimidated by it. Because, one of my reviewers said, initially I was intimidated by the sheer size of Funeral Nights. But when I came to the end, I said to myself, I wish it were longer. I'm so in love with it that I am missing Funeral Nights.
This is how, ladies and gentlemen, this is course 101 about how an author should elegantly plug his or her book. Take your cues, because many among us are wannabe writers, and I hope you are. I hope you're all writers, as we are all readers, which is why all of you are here. Now, Kynpham used a sentence while he was reading out from this fascinating bit, which I wouldn't apply to the book, which is, I will end soon. This is not a set of words I would apply to a book of more than 1,000 pages. But having said that, one thing struck me, that when you're talking about people and situations and other things, there are remarkable similarities between, I know because Sowvendra has spoken about it earlier, there are remarkable similarities between rationale for getting out there and writing about your people and writing about a purpose which both of you share. Now, of course, Sowvendra has taken the easier route. He's written many smaller books. Kynpham has gone the other extreme and written in this vast book several collections. Don't say anything, because I'm going to go to the house. Because I'm not here to make comments. I would like you, ladies and gentlemen, to engage with these two writers. The floor is yours. They're your humble servants. Sir, we need a mic here. Quickly, please. We don't have much time. Thank you.
My question is to Mr. Kynpham. So my question is about the myth of present-day Khashi society being matrilineal, because all of your chief ministers, all of your politicians, except Agatha Christie, Agatha Sangma, sorry, all of your businessmen, all have been men. Yeah, all have been men, and this is at least in popular light. So my question is Khashi society at present day really matrilineal?
Yes. This is a very good question. And there is a very heated debate about this. Khasi society is still a matrilineal society. And Agatha Sangma, by the way, is not Khasi. So she is Garo, all right. There is no obstruction to a woman to participate in politics or to be a candidate for any of the political posts. There is no obstruction. There is no bar. Wealth and property go to the daughters, especially the last daughter in the house. So they are the custodians of ancestral wealth and property. So in that sense, the Khasi community does take care of of what it considers to be the weaker sections in the society. But also, in the past, there were very clear-cut divisions of functions. Men were supposed to take care of the politics, the defense of the country, but women were supposed to be to run the house jointly with the father. And in Khasi families, the economics is taken care of by both the father and the mother. So that more women are not taking part in politics. That is actually, although they cannot, they cannot still now, they cannot sit, in traditional dorbas, but there is no, there is no, there is no rule that says that women should not take part in politics. In fact, many Khasi women are taking part in politics, but that they don't win, that they don't do so well, are for various, very complex reasons.
The lady at the back, please.
Hi. If we have time, I'd love to hear from all of you about writing about lived experiences, because that's something all three of you have written about. So as writers, how do you approach your writing and writing about your lived experiences?
I think young Sowvendra can go with that. Yeah, not me, because this is not about me. It's about Sowvendra and Kynpham. We can meet outside.
Writing about lived experiences is both easy as well as difficult. It is easy because you have lived it. So, like I said, writing needs practice. If you write, you cannot stop writing. Even if you do not find the time to write, even if you do not find the opportunity to write, there is something inside you that is just, bubbling, like, yeah, you have to write this. What do you write about at that time when you're tired, when you see darkness everywhere, when you're unable to imagine? At that time, maybe you can, create a story, something, fiction, but lived experience helps you out at that time because it comes immediately to your mind. So because it is so easy to remember what you have written, what you have gone through, what you have experienced. So in that way, writing about lived experience is easy. But if your experience is completely rotten, how are you going to write about it? Okay, so in that way, it is difficult. How much you're going to tell, how much you're going to remember, because there are some events which are so traumatic that even thinking about them is traumatic. And now you have to write those down. And you have to write those down because you are unable to stop yourself from expressing those. How much are you going to tell? What are you going to tell? In which way are you going to tell? Which part of your memory are you going to put in writing? So in that way, it is difficult. So it is both easy plus difficult. It's basically painful, man. Writing is painful.
Kynpham, please.
Yeah, I have a slightly different answer. You see, I believe that a novel, I believe in what Raymond Williams said about what a novel should be. He said, a novel should not be about certain issues or about certain ideas. A novel should be about life. And that's what Funeral Nights is. It is about life, lived experiences. But then living in the Northeast, writing about lived experiences can be a big problem. See, in this book, I'm writing about crooked politicians, corrupt politicians. I'm writing about the coal barons, the coal mafias, who have been bumping off even police officers. I'm writing about the militants, the insurgents. So what do? I have to master the art of witness. I have to master the art of witness. So Funeral Nights is an example where I have mastered the art of witness. I'm using fiction to write about non-fiction. Thank you.
Sir.
I am also a doctor. I'm a cardiologist. Recently, I've tried to write the memoirs of my father, who was also a doctor. So my question is to you. While you have been talking about your lived experiences,
yes, sir.
So how much thought is there as far as you want to make it more passionate, more emotional, as compared to make it more readable or more sellable? So there is a mix of these approach, or you just go for passion and emotions while you're writing?
So actually, it's a mix of both. Like, for example, my first novel was called, thank you for your question, sir. My first novel, The Mysterious Ailment of Rupi Basque, it was published in 2014, although I wrote it in 2011. At that time, I was doing my housemanship in the Ops Gynae department of my medical college in Jamshedpur. This novel, Rupi Basque, it begins with a childbirth scene. There's a woman in a village who gives birth to her first child while she is transplanting paddy. She goes into labor then. Uh, I took, hints for this particular scene from what I had seen in the labor room. And from what I had heard from, my family and from people in my village about women actually giving birth while they were drawing water from the well or while they were, working in their farm. So it was okay. It was a nice beginning. I was praised by people for that. I did not actually give it much of a thought till a friend of mine yesterday. She's a woman, and she told me, you have written it brilliantly. Did it ever occur to you? I said, no, it did not occur to me because it was what I had seen, what I had experienced. So I take inspiration from real life, from what I've seen, and like how Kynpham said, writing should be like writing non-fiction in fiction. So that is what I did. And that is what I try to do, but sometimes I have to be cautious as well, like what I'm writing. I try not to get carried away, and that's it.
We'll ignore the buzzer, and I'll invoke my rights as session chair. The last question from this young gentleman here.
This question is mainly to Kynpham sir, but anyone can answer. Like you mentioned that not only are the indigenous stories not known by the outsiders, or it's not even known by the people themselves. I am from Garhwal, lived all my life in Gujarat. I don't know any stories of the Garhwali Hills. Now, where do you think was this thing starting? Is there some shame involved in even acknowledging your heritage in some way? And how can we actually get over this? Because that's a very big problem that even I face.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. For us, the ignorance of the Khasi people about their own history, about their own past, about their own culture, about their own myths and legends, originated with the British and the Welsh missionaries, when the Welsh missionaries brought Christianity to the hills. So what happened was they effectively implanted a new past on Khasi minds. So Khasis, forgot about their own past. They forgot about their own myths and legends. They stopped venerating, their own holy places. So a new past is implanted in them, and anything indigenous, anything traditional was discouraged as pagan, irreligious, unholy. So that was how it all started. But thankfully, the young generations are now rediscovering themselves. And from the reactions of many of the young readers to this book, it seems that they are very thankful for this kind of book because they now are being encouraged to rediscover their own roots. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I must reluctantly bring this session to a close. A round of applause for my friends and writers who I hope have inspired all of us. And do read the books written by Kynpham, including Funeral Nights, and of course the books written by my young friend Sowvendra Shekhar Hansda, who somehow, even in the life as a doctor, finds time to write very fine writing. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good festival.